and welcome to this latest pod vid on Heroes All rules, and today we're looking at aircraft and boats. So I'm going to begin by just saying that the rules here are all encompassed within Heroes All. Clearly they are mentioned within the mechanism of fight your own battles for solo play in terms of how they affect the game, but the rules, how they do what they do, is all in Heroes All. So let's start with aircraft and have a look at the general rules, a bit of background for aircraft. First and foremost, and very important, these rules are very basic. Heroes All and Fight Your Own Battles is written for ground-based games, and therefore aircraft and to a certain extent boats are really very much superfluous to what goes on the table. Now clearly aircraft and boats do have an impact on our games, but we don't play, the rules are not written for air battles or naval battles, so they really are incidental players and therefore very basic rules. Now, as I said before, with plenty of things about these rules, I'm not precious about them. If you have a set of rules that work for you for aircraft and boats and you want to use them, by all means use them. You're not going to upset me. Basically this is a set of rules that you can use just to get aircraft and boats included in your game. So my aircraft are categorized into fighters and super fighters and bombers and ground attack, etc., and are fully detailed on the codex cards that will shortly be released, showing all these aircraft types. And those codex cards will also give you a value for the aircraft. Now that value is a strength value, and every time the aircraft is hit and suffers damage, that strength value will diminish. When the value gets down to 0, the aircraft is driven off, and when it gets below 0, the aircraft is shot down. You'll notice some similarities with the bridges and buildings rules in terms of strength values. It's a very simple, easy thing to keep track of. The speeds of aircraft, very simple. They're either fast, normal or slow. Again, we have simplified the rules in terms of trying to keep the game flowing without trying to work out, well, hang on a minute, the rate ascending of this aircraft is X and the rate of descent is Y. That all gets really complicated. So in the same way that we have categorized and grouped together things like anti-tank weapons and armor on tanks, so we've categorized and grouped together speeds and types of aircraft. There's also a third element, of course, in all this, and that is that the weapons that these aircraft carry, and they tend to be cannon, machine guns, and then you've got bombs and rockets and that kind of things, and they are generic terms, light bombs, heavy bombs, etc. You'll find all those in the rules. In terms of the environment that these aircraft travel around in, they are given for ease and simplification 3 levels of flight, so low, medium and high. So low level is ground attack, gliders on approach, torpedo bombers, that kind of thing. Medium is tactical bombing, dive bombers on approach, transport aircraft dropping paratroops, escort fighters, that kind of stuff. And up at high level you've got the strategic bombing and aircraft travelling between bases. The aircraft themselves, a squadron is normally made up of up to 3 machines, and when they come onto the table they're allowed to operate over the table for a maximum of 4 bounds, but there is a limit on the number of aircraft that can be over the table at any one time, and that's to stop the table being crowded out by dozens and dozens of aircraft and bombers and escort fighters all fighting each other. They are very much kind of secondary to the ground game, and I'm trying to represent in the rules here the situation where an aircraft will literally pass straight over the table and do something whilst it's passing over the table. It's not intended that the table becomes, if you like, the ground zone in which we have mass aerial battles. So I'm trying to keep this kind of aircraft in the background thing all the time. When the aircraft do appear, much in the same way as the tanks and infantry and everything else, the aircraft are subject to officer reaction tests, and they will follow the order dice. And naturally there are observation rules for aircraft and against aircraft. There are rules for them firing and them being fired against. And finally, an obvious observation perhaps, and that is that aircraft operation is affected by weather. Now, although there are limits over the number of aircraft you can have over the table and what they can do while they are there, it does make sense to have some rules for air-to-air combat, and they are included, as are, as you would expect, rules for dealing with paratroopers, with gliders landing, and anti-aircraft fire. So the rules cover all those so that you can include aircraft fully within your game. So let's turn our attention to boats and start by just recapping the fact that, as I think we touched on in the bridges video, the river types are defined from stream up to broad river, and this definition has to be included on your maps or on your scenarios, because clearly only certain craft can traverse certain river types. The craft themselves are really listed under 3 headings, which I'll come on to in a moment, but needless to say, the rivers themselves are affected by weather, as are the movement rates up and down rivers. And there's also a very small section covering things like marshland and swamps, which kind of comes under rivers but doesn't include boats. So those 3 types of craft that we look at are essentially river craft, and these have specified movement rates up and down river. They use an act in order to embark or disembark whatever's on them, mostly infantry. And of course they can carry weapons. Now, a river craft could be a canoe or a raft or an assault boat. It could also be a river gunboat. Clearly, depending on the type of river and the type of scenario you're playing, all those things come into play. The second type of craft that we consider are landing craft, and there are rules for beach landings, and also covering off the capacity of the different types of landing craft that there are. The third and final type of craft are seagoing craft, and having said that, we don't cover naval battles, but clearly we do need some rules for seagoing craft, because they can be used as off-table artillery for beach assaults and the like, so indirect firing rules. You've got rules for loading and unloading if they happen to arrive in a port or in a harbour or a dock or whatever that might appear on your board. But I would say that those types of rules for unloading and loading are going to be expanded in Fight Your Own Wars, and will become very much a paper exercise rather than models on the table. So just a brief touch on the bigger boats and the effect of bigger boats here, but more of that to come later. And that's about it. Now, clearly I haven't gone through any of the rules that appear in Heroes All or the mentions in Fight Your Own Battles. I haven't gone through any of those in detail, because that's not the point of this video. I'm trying to give you some thought processes behind the rules so that you understand it more. And that thought process is that aircraft and boats are very much supplementary to the main ground game that we are playing. We need some rules to cover the situations where these craft appear, and that's exactly what these do. As I've said before, if you want to substitute them in for your own rules, or you want to include big naval battles with a bit of land as well, or you want to include massive air battles and the land becomes kind of supplementary to that, then you go ahead and do that. I'm not precious, but actually I look at it the other way around, which is why they're written from the view they're written at. So that's about Heroes All done, other than one small pod vid on logistics. Now that's something which is going to be expanded on quite heavily in Fight Your Own Wars, but it can affect a simple scenario, and a lot of scenarios do write in kind of logistical limits on armies because of their situation. So we'll talk about how we deal with that and why the rules are written why they are. Up the pipe, I've got a background pod vid on hints for playing solo games and how to make it a bit easier for you, which may have been covered in part elsewhere, but I'm going to bring that all together just to help you. There is a battle report on a game that I have played, which I will also release. Thanks for sticking along. I'll see you soon. Thank you very much for your interest in what I do. There's more information at www.fightyourownbattles.co.uk. Like, subscribe for more, hit that notifications bell, and when there's more to come, you'll be the first to know.